She was accidentally pushed into a millionaire's lap at a restaurant and felt something unexpected. Restaurant Alba, a hidden gem in the heart of Manhattan, shimmered beneath warm golden lights. Crystal glasses dangled like stars above white marble walls, refracting soft rainbows across the room. Inside, executives in tailored suits and socialites in silk whispered over aged wine, unaware that destiny was about to stage a rather comedic performance in the middle of their elegant evening. Emily Torres weaved through the tables with surprising speed. At 23, she was a diligent waitress at Alba. Though often scolded by Chef Layla for her clumsiness, Emily was the only server who could make even the pickiest guest crack a smile. With her fresh face, loosely tied brown hair, bright hazel eyes, and genuine smile, she wasn't the most glamorous presence in the room, but she was the most unforgettable. Lobster with butter sauce for table 8, grilled wagyu for table 12, and oh no, what was table 16 again? She muttered, trying to steady the steaming tray in her hands. A single bead of sweat rolled down her brow. Her black apron bore a small tomato sauce stain she'd been hiding with a folded napkin all evening. No time to worry about that now. She stepped into the center of the dining room, the brightest, most visible part, just as fate decided to play its little trick. Marco, her childhood best friend and fellow waiter, burst out of the kitchen holding a bottle of 1997 Barolo, one of Alba's rarest. "Coming through," he shouted, eyes fixed on the label, mumbling the steps Chef Layla had drilled into him for serving wine to VIPs. "Marco, watch out," another waiter yelled, but it was too late. In one breathtaking second, Marco dodged a tower of crystal glasses but failed to see Emily directly in his path. Crash. The sound of impact cracked through the restaurant like thunder. Emily flew off the ground like a rag doll, her tray soaring into the air like confetti. Lobster tails streaked across the room like shooting stars. Butter sauce splattered midair, and Emily, frozen in time, landed squarely in the lap of Nathan Hale, the man at table 16, the one she had just forgotten the order for. Nathan, 30, CEO of Hale Ventures, sat alone reviewing contracts on a tablet. Jet black hair combed back flawlessly, navy suit uncreased, eyes sharp and cold, brows furrowed in intense focus. A man not used to surprises. His Patek Philippe watch glinted beneath his crisp white sleeve, and now nestled in his lap was a stunned waitress smelling faintly of melted butter and lemon zest. Emily opened her eyes. She felt firm hands wrapped around her waist, holding her from crashing to the floor. She stammered. Nathan stared straight at her. In 30 years, he'd faced high-stakes negotiations and billion-dollar deals, but never had anyone literally fallen into his lap. The restaurant froze. Cutlery paused midair. All eyes turned to them. Emily flushed red, but it wasn't over yet. A single strand of angel hair pasta rested gracefully across Nathan's dark hair. Butter sauce trickled from his tie down onto his white shirt. Emily's jaw dropped. "Oh my God," she whispered. And then, on instinct, she tried to stand. But her foot caught the chair. Her hand reached for the nearest support, Nathan's tie, pulling him forward once again. They were now closer, much closer, eye to eye, face to face, breath against breath. Amidst the silent audience, the two of them just stared at each other, as if time had stopped. And that was the exact moment fate decided their story would begin. Emily couldn't quite remember how she managed to pull herself out of Nathan's lap. She only recalled untangling her hand from his tie, spinning on her heels and practically sprinting back into the kitchen, where Marco stood frozen, looking like he'd seen a ghost. She wanted to disappear. Meanwhile, Nathan remained seated at table 16, soaked in butter, his tie askew, his once crisp white shirt now stained with lemon sauce and seafood. Other waiters quickly swooped in, replacing dishes, offering towels, apologizing profusely. But Nathan simply looked up and gave a small smile, the first anyone in the restaurant had ever seen from him. Then he said something that nearly made the floor manager drop her notepad. "I want that girl to come back." The manager blinked. "You mean the waitress?" Nathan nodded. "Yes, Emily Torres. I'd like to speak with her." Later that night, after most of the diners had left, Emily was hiding behind the bar, clutching a glass of water and silently begging the universe to let her vanish. But then, she heard the unmistakable sound of dress shoes approaching behind her. She turned. It was him, Nathan, now in a fresh shirt, no more seafood scent, but still with those intense eyes and an expression even more unreadable than before. "Do you cook?" he asked bluntly. Emily blinked. I like to. Mostly for my roommate, or Marco. But if you mean like, for service." "No," he cut her off, voice calm. "I mean, would you cook a private dinner? For me? At your place?" She stared. "You mean, to apologize for landing on you?" Nathan smirked. "Yeah, something like restitution, but I'll pay you." She let out a nervous laugh, half embarrassed, half baffled. "I don't usually get paid for crashing into people." "Then consider it a date," he said, eyes steady on hers. Emily froze. For the first time, it felt like the world around her slowed down. The hum of the air conditioner, the glint of light in the glassware, the pounding of her own heart. "Friday," Nathan added. 7 o'clock. I'll bring the wine." She hadn't said yes yet. He looked at her, then added softly, "Don't overthink it. I just want to know who you are, when you're not wearing that uniform and following orders." There was a pause, long enough for her to feel the gravity of his words. Then Emily gave a small nod. "Okay, but I can't promise the food will make up for anything." Nathan tilted his head slightly, a ghost of a smile on his lips. "We'll see," he replied and turned away, leaving Emily standing behind the bar, still clutching her glass, heart racing wildly. And so, on a surprising autumn evening, Emily Torres, the small-town waitress in the middle of massive New York, agreed to cook her very first dinner, not for her job, but for herself. The story had started to shift, from coincidence to destiny. Emily's apartment was on the 5th floor of an old brick building in Brooklyn. No elevator, no buzzer, just creaky steps and a worn wooden railing that groaned under pressure. But that evening, when the doorbell rang exactly at 7, she barely felt tired anymore. Standing outside was Nathan, dressed more casually than usual, holding a bottle of red wine and a bundle of dried lavender. He held the flowers toward her, calm but slightly softer in demeanor than the man she'd first met. "Not exactly traditional, but I thought the scent might suit you better." Emily smiled, awkward but grateful, stepping aside to let him in. "Come in, and thank you. They're beautiful, really." The apartment, barely 500 square feet, was warm and personal in a way few city homes were. A tiny kitchen corner filled with spice jars, cookbooks, and potted herbs growing out of old tin cans. A wall decorated with photos of dishes she had cooked herself. A weathered wooden table with 2 chairs, which she had spent all afternoon cleaning. On the stove, a pot of chicken stew simmered, releasing the comforting aroma of garlic, onion, bay leaves, and rosemary. Scents that stirred memories she rarely shared with anyone in the city. Nathan stepped in, his gaze quiet and thoughtful, observing without judgment. "Do you live alone?" "No, I have a roommate. She's working a night shift. I bribed her with homemade brownies." He chuckled lightly, placing the wine on the table. Emily busied herself with final touches in the kitchen, hoping her flurry of movement would hide how jittery she felt. But Nathan remained near, watching until he asked, his voice calm, "Where did you learn to cook?" She paused, then turned to answer. "At home. My grandma taught me. She was the first to show me how to feel food. She passed when I was 16, but I kept her handwritten notebook. Every time I cook, I feel like she's still sitting behind me, smiling." Nathan nodded slowly. He didn't speak again, but something softened behind his eyes. Dinner was served beneath soft candlelight, with glasses of red wine and faint jazz humming from an old speaker on the shelf. Emily brought out the main course, lemon-roasted chicken with herb potatoes, a dish chosen not for its complexity, but for the memories it held. "It's not fancy, but it's the one I trust most," she admitted. Nathan tasted it, then looked up. "It's really good," he said sincerely. Emily let out a small breath. "Thank you. Honestly, I didn't think you'd actually come." Nathan tilted his head. "Why not?" "Because you're a busy CEO, and I'm the waitress who dumped sauce on your shirt." He set down his utensils, eyes steady. That fall was the most interesting thing that happened to me all week. Emily laughed. Not the polite kind, but the kind that came from somewhere real, deep inside. She'd never imagined she'd feel so at ease, sitting across from someone like Nathan. Sharp, distant, and from a world far removed from hers. After dinner, they sat side by side on her old couch, the one where she often read cookbooks late into the night. Nathan leaned slightly back, wine in hand, his gaze wandering. He spoke of his childhood, years of constant moves because of his parents' careers, lonely dinners in hotel rooms, and the odd emptiness of having everything but feeling something missing. I think that's why I chose food, he said. I believe in meals. They bring strangers together. Like tonight. Emily nodded. I believe that too. But for me, food is a language. I'm not great with words, but I tell stories through flavor. Nathan looked at her, focused. So, what story did you tell tonight? Emily paused, set her glass down, and smiled faintly. A story about a girl who thought she was invisible in this giant city, but with one fall, someone finally saw her. That evening ended with a quiet kind of tenderness. After Nathan left, Emily remained on her old sofa, holding a glass of wine that had gone cold, though her heart still felt warm. She wasn't sure what would come after tonight. Was it just a simple meal, or the beginning of something deeper? The next day, while slicing lemons in Alba's kitchen, Emily received a text from Nathan. This Saturday, I'm attending the opening of my new restaurant. Will you come with me? She froze for a moment, knife still in hand. Part of her felt overwhelmed. It was a major event, filled with press, investors, and high society. But another part of her saw it as a chance to step beyond her comfort zone, to find out if what sparked between them was real, or just something that only existed in the quiet of her Brooklyn apartment. She didn't take long to reply. Yes, I'll go. And just like that, from a small kitchen where everything was familiar, Emily was about to step into a world of flashbulbs, gowns, champagne, and the sharp eyes of a class she'd never imagined facing. The dress Emily wore that evening was borrowed from her roommate. It wasn't glamorous, but it fit perfectly. Simple, classic, understated, just like her. She stared at her reflection, slightly disoriented by what she saw, a different version of herself. Not the waitress rushing through a hot kitchen, but a woman about to step into a world she had never imagined belonging to. Nathan arrived in a sleek black car, dressed in a charcoal suit tailored to perfection. He stepped out and opened the door for her like it was the most natural thing in the world. You look beautiful, he said simply, but the way he looked at her said more than words ever could. Emily smiled and nodded, her heart pounding messily in her chest. The event was held at the grand opening of a new restaurant backed by Hale Ventures, a space that brought together celebrity chefs, food critics, investors, and far too many faces Emily had only ever seen on magazine covers. As Nathan took her hand and led her into the dazzling, chandelier-lit venue, she felt the shift immediately. Glances from strangers, polite but distant smiles, the subtle weight of curiosity and judgment. She wasn't part of them, and everyone could see it. Nathan, calm as always, placed a gentle hand on her back, a quiet reassurance. I'm here. Emily took a deep breath and walked steadily, head high, not avoiding eye contact, not shrinking into the background. She didn't need to be anyone else. She just had to remain herself. Then came the voice, sweet but sharp like glass. Oh, you must be Emily. Emily turned. Standing before her was a tall blonde woman with deep red lips and an elegant smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She needed no introduction. Emily knew immediately. Sloan Whitmore, Nathan's ex. Lovely to meet you. Nathan has such simple taste lately, Sloan said smoothly, her eyes drifting over Emily's borrowed dress and worn shoes. You work at Alba, right? As a waitress? It's charming. I suppose he enjoys comfort food these days. Emily held her smile, steady, not strained. Yes, I work at Alba. And you are enjoying life, I assume. Sloane's expression flickered for a second, but quickly recovered. I always do, dear. I can tell, Emily replied gently, meeting her eyes. Thanks for stopping by to say hello. I'll remember this moment." Before Sloane could respond, Nathan stepped in, positioning himself firmly between the two. "Sloane," he said quietly but firmly, "we're having a lovely evening. I hope you are too." Sloane offered a tight-lipped smile and retreated, a cloud of expensive perfume lingering in her wake. Along with tension she tried to leave behind. Emily didn't say anything. She simply looked at Nathan and gave him a small nod to say, "I'm fine." And she truly was. The laughter, the camera flashes, the casual conversations about Europe, real estate, and investment opportunities buzzed around Emily like background noise in a language she didn't speak. But she didn't retreat. She stood her ground, listened, smiled, and when asked, she spoke confidently about her work, her favorite dishes, and her belief in food as a language that connects people. Near the bar, Emily noticed an elderly woman sitting alone with a glass of white wine. Her face was kind, her eyes clear and sharp, watching but not judging. "You must be Emily." The woman spoke before Emily could turn away. "I'm Evelyn, Nathan's grandmother." Emily paused, a little surprised, but quickly smiled and nodded. "Yes, it's a pleasure to meet you." "Likewise," Evelyn said, studying her quietly. "Nathan rarely brings anyone to events like this. But with you, I think he sees something most people here don't have." Before Emily could reply, the older woman added, "You know, at my age, I've stopped caring what people wear or what they do for a living. I pay attention to how they walk into a room, and you walked in without lowering your head. I like that." For the first time all night, Emily felt something lift from her chest, not because of the compliment, but because someone had truly seen her. Not the dress, not her job, but who she was. As the evening came to a close, Nathan gently held her hand and walked her out of the venue. The cool night breeze rustled her hair as the city pulsed around them. "You okay?" he asked softly. Emily smiled, lifting her chin. "I'm fine, really." And though their worlds were still different, tonight Emily had proved one thing. She didn't need to belong to be worthy of being there. A week after the grand opening event, Emily received an official invitation from Nathan. Sunday dinner with his family at their estate in Upper Manhattan. At first she hesitated, not out of fear, but because she understood perfectly well that this wasn't just a dinner, it would be a test. The car drove them past bustling city blocks, then turned into a quiet residential area where white fences were perfectly trimmed. Every house had a backyard and warm golden lights glowed from within. As the vehicle stopped in front of tall iron gates, Emily instinctively tightened her grip on Nathan's hand. He gently squeezed back without saying a word, but his eyes told her everything. He knew. He knew this wasn't an easy door to walk through. The house was large, elegant, but cold. They stepped into a marble foyer under the soft glow of a crystal chandelier. Evelyn, the only person in this family who made Emily feel at ease, was the first to greet them. "You're here," she smiled warmly, taking Emily's hand. "Don't worry, dinner is just an excuse. I'm here." Emily squeezed her hand gently and smiled in return, grateful. The dining room was perfectly set, every detail arranged with care. Most of the family had already arrived. Nathan's mother, Helena, tall, slender, adorned in pearls and sharp-eyed like a blade. Uncle David, Nathan's father's younger brother, quiet but observant, and two well-dressed female cousins who looked at Emily as if she were a case study to be evaluated. The questions began as early as the appetizer. "So, Emily, you work at Alba, correct?" Helena's voice was steady but cool. "Where did you study culinary arts? Do you have a degree?" "No, ma'am," Emily replied calmly. "I learned from my grandmother. She taught me to cook by feeling. I've always believed that good food comes more from the heart than from a certificate." The first cousin let out a soft laugh. "So, by emotion? That sounds very artistic." Emily smiled unshaken. "I believe food is an art, and emotion is an essential ingredient. Just like music, no one needs a conservatory degree to play guitar in a way that moves someone." Helena raised an eyebrow slightly. "But sometimes reason must outweigh emotion, especially when my son is expected to lead a company where there's no room for romance." At that, Nathan set down his utensils and looked directly at his mother. "We're having dinner, not a boardroom interview." Helena didn't turn to him. She simply sipped her wine and said softly, I'm simply getting to know the person you think is right for you." Emily took a breath, then raised her chin. "I understand. And I didn't come here to be accepted. I came because Nathan invited me. I can't change where I come from or what I lack. But I know exactly what gives a person value. And if that can't be measured by diplomas, money, or status, then maybe we're not speaking the same language." The room fell quiet. Helena said nothing. David gave a small nod. Evelyn smiled gently, her hand resting lightly on Emily's shoulder. After dinner, as they moved to the back patio for tea, Nathan reached for Emily's hand. "You did amazing," he whispered. Emily looked at him seriously. "I didn't come here to impress anyone. I came so they'd see who I really am. If they don't accept that, at least I didn't lower myself to be liked." Nathan was quiet for a moment. "I know, and I'm proud of you." In that moment, no other words were needed. Emily didn't need a pat on the back or applause. She knew it in her bones. She had walked into that house not to be chosen, but to choose herself. And for the first time, she understood. Loving someone doesn't mean stepping into their world to survive. It means asking whether their world is wide enough to welcome you both. Ever since that dinner, things between Emily and Nathan became quieter, not in distance, but in depth. It felt like they had crossed an invisible threshold, where words were no longer necessary, and a glance was enough to say, "We're in this together." Emily returned to her usual rhythm at Alba, but everything had shifted. People noticed her more, not just as Nathan Hale's girlfriend, but because of a photo circulating online. A moment frozen in time, showing her standing tall, meeting Sloane's icy gaze without a flinch. Then came an email from an unfamiliar sender, an invitation to join a renowned restaurant in Paris as a sous chef, a place Emily had once dreamed of, but never truly believed she could belong to. She read the message 3 times, her heart pounding. An opportunity, clear, massive, aligned with everything she loved, but also the question that weighed heavier than anything else. If I go, what happens to us? That morning, Emily sat by the window of her apartment, a cup of coffee in her hand, long gone cold. On her laptop screen was the same email she had read 3 times already, and now a 4th. The words hadn't changed. An official invitation from Maison Ardent, one of the most prestigious restaurants in Paris, offering her the position of sous chef on their culinary team. She didn't respond right away. In fact, she couldn't. A quiet voice inside her kept whispering, "This is your dream, and it has been for a long time." She thought of the evenings spent in her grandmother's tiny kitchen, where she first learned how to slice onions without crying, how to taste with not just her tongue, but her heart. Maison Ardent was once a distant name to her, a star in the sky she dared only to look at, not reach. And now, when that star finally drew close, she found herself unable to breathe, because the dream had arrived just when she had found something she never thought she'd have, a love that made her want to stay. She chose a quiet cafe near the park for their conversation, the same cafe where they'd sat many times before, with the familiar wooden chairs and the breeze that always carried a bit of roasted beans and autumn air. Nathan arrived as calm as always, with the same gentle expression that softened even the hardest truths. When they sat down, Emily knew she couldn't dance around it. She held his hand for a brief second before pulling away and placing both hands on the table between them. "I got an offer to be a sous chef in Paris," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Nathan didn't react immediately. There was a short silence before he looked at her and asked slowly, "Maison Ardent?" She nodded. He leaned back in his chair, eyes lifting to the gray New York sky, then smiled, not out of joy, not out of sadness, but with a quiet calm, like someone hearing something they always knew would come. "I always knew you weren't meant to stay in one place," he said, "and I knew you wouldn't stay here forever." Emily swallowed hard. "I used to think dreams would come when I was ready, but no one tells you they might come when your heart already belongs somewhere else." Nathan looked at her for a long time. There was no anger in his eyes, no bitterness, only a quiet understanding, the kind of sorrow that comes when something beautiful is ending, and no one is to blame. "You have to go," he said gently. "Don't let this pass. It's part of you, and you shouldn't leave yourself behind for anyone." Not even me. His voice was steady, but there was a fracture within it. Emily heard it clearly, even though she tried not to. She didn't want to cry. Not here, not now, not when the moment was already tender enough. She looked at him and held her smile. I'll go. Not because I want to leave you, but because I know if I stay, I'll lose something of myself. Nathan nodded. I know. And because I love you, I won't stop you. They didn't break up that day. They gave themselves one more week. Walks in the park, quiet dinners at their favorite spots, small conversations that had nothing to do with the future. No long-term planning, no binding promises, just a slow goodbye, soft enough to feel it, fast enough to avoid falling apart. On the day Emily left New York, it rained. There was no farewell at the airport. They had agreed on that. No last-minute running hugs, no tearful stay at the gate. They had already said goodbye in her small apartment. No drama, no anger, just a long embrace, a kiss on her forehead, and Nathan's final words. If you ever come back, I'll still be here. She didn't answer. Not because she didn't believe him, but because some promises don't need to be returned. They just need to be held quietly in the heart. Paris greeted her with early winter chill. The city didn't wait for anyone, and neither did the kitchen at Maison Arden. Emily jumped into work with all the energy she had. 14-hour days, rapid-fire French, the stern gazes of head chefs, all of it exhausted her, but it also made her feel more alive than ever before. On her first night leaving the kitchen, she stepped into the cool air with her coat draped loosely over her shoulders, hands still smelling of butter and garlic. She looked up at the gray Paris sky, at the windows glowing gold in the distance, and smiled without meaning to. She missed New York. She missed Nathan, but she didn't regret it. Because she knew love doesn't always mean holding on. Sometimes love is letting go, so the other person can grow. And when two people truly care, distance isn't an end. It's a quiet kind of waiting, one that doesn't need a promise to exist. Emily chose to go, not to leave Nathan, but to walk toward herself. And that choice, even though it hurt, was still something beautiful. Paris would welcome Emily like an unfinished painting, one she would have to complete with her own sweat, discipline, and belief. But before that chapter could begin, before the plane took her across the ocean, there was one final moment she hadn't expected. That morning the sky was overcast, the air heavy with the weight of parting. Emily arrived at the airport earlier than needed, not to escape anything, but to give herself time to breathe. She walked through the terminal pulling her suitcase, her eyes distant, her heart full yet strangely at peace. Every necessary goodbye had already been said. The dream she had longed for, she was finally claiming it. And then, a familiar voice called out behind her. Planning to leave without letting me say goodbye? Emily turned. Standing there amid couples hugging and departure announcements echoing overhead was Grandma Evelyn, holding a small umbrella, wrapped in a soft gray coat, her silver hair neatly tied back, and her eyes just as warm as the first day they met. Grandma, Emily whispered, walking toward her quickly. I figured you thought it'd be easier this way. Evelyn smiled gently, not accusing. But I knew. I always know. They sat together on a bench near the large glass windows, watching planes rise one after another into the sky. Evelyn handed her a small box. Inside was a delicate embroidered handkerchief, soft and detailed, with a single E stitched into the corner. I made this when I was young, she said, just before I left my hometown and came to America. I was scared too, but also excited, just like you. Emily held the fabric tightly in her hands, eyes glassy but no tears falling. Do you think I'm doing the right thing? You're doing what you need to do, Evelyn answered calmly. Love, if it's big enough, never ends. It just steps aside sometimes, so each person can become who they're meant to be. She turned to Emily, her gaze steady and clear. Nathan is a smart man, but stubborn. Your heart is strong. The two of you are like rivers. Sometimes they flow apart for a while, but who's to say they won't meet again one day? Emily nodded slowly, smiling through the ache building in her chest. I don't know what the future looks like. I just know that if I don't go, I'll always wonder, what if? And you'll do just fine in Paris, Evelyn said, squeezing her hand gently, because you carry the love of everything behind you, your past, your present, and maybe even your future. The loudspeaker called her flight. Emily stood, then leaned in to embrace Evelyn, tight, long, and full of unspoken blessings. She walked through the security gate without looking back, not because she didn't want to, but because she knew. Some goodbyes are best kept in the heart, not repeated with one last glance. 5 years after leaving New York, Emily came back. Paris had become a part of her. Her years at Maison Ardent didn't just sharpen her craft. They shaped her into someone calmer, stronger, more whole. She once believed her heart would always carry a missing piece, left behind in New York. With Nathan, behind the airport gates on the day she chose herself over them. But even after 5 years, she hadn't forgotten his eyes that day. She hadn't forgotten the quiet promise he whispered. "If you ever come back, I'll still be here." She wasn't sure if she had truly believed it, but that morning, as she stepped off the plane, this time with lighter luggage and steadier steps, no longer lost but found, her heart beat with the same quiet thrill it once knew. She walked through familiar streets past the old cafe where their laughter once danced with the clink of coffee cups. The light hit just right, soft, golden, like the evening 5 years ago. Her breath caught as she looked toward the entrance. Part of her didn't expect to see anyone. Part of her never stopped hoping. And then she saw him. He was standing there, not by chance, not by coincidence, but waiting. Nathan, still him, yet changed. More grounded, more composed. But when their eyes met, time seemed to fold into itself, and all the years in between melted away. They said nothing at first. Emily walked toward him slowly, and he just smiled, that same quiet smile she had carried in memory. Then, without hesitation, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small box. "I've carried this ring with me for 5 years," he said, his voice low and tight with emotion. "Not to hold you back, but because every single day I hoped, quietly, stubbornly, that one day I'd see you again. And if that day ever came, I wanted to be ready." Emily couldn't hold back the tears. She laughed through the ache, through the overwhelming flood in her chest, as if her heart had finally found its rhythm again. Nathan knelt down right there, in the middle of the street. No witnesses, no music, no grand display. Just one quiet question. This time, "Would you like to stay? Forever?" Emily nodded, no hesitation, no doubts. And just like that, after all the turns, the choices, and the goodbyes, they chose each other. No conditions, no what-ifs. The story didn't end with a lavish wedding or a burst of fireworks. Just two people, hand in hand, walking down a familiar street beneath a soft golden sunset. And in their eyes was everything they had endured, everything they had lost, everything they had held on to, so they could finally return to where they truly belonged. Not the place, not the city, but each other.